Hey guys. So the movie Megan 2.0, I should say, came out, and a lot of people have had mixed reactions about it. In fact, some people have had mixed reactions about it, even when the first, even after, the first and final trailers came out, promoting it. And look, we all know that the first Megan was a horror film. Basically, I would say if you look at a percentage level, it was 60% horror, 40% sci-fi. That's what it was. Now, all of a sudden, it seems that the movie, the franchise, I should say, has done a complete 180. And instead of keeping that horror theme, instead the more of a sci-fi action, comedy, whatever you want to call it, basically non-horror. I mean, yeah, you have some people would say that have seen the movie would say, yeah, you have some horror elements still in there, like some of the kills and all that by the Amelia robot and stuff, and things like that. But it's mostly toned down. It's basically horror light, if you will. It's basically like a very light horror. Like you're gonna have your moments and everything, your jump scares and stuff like that. But it's so minuscule that it doesn't feel like it affects you in any way. And it's understandable for people to be kind of confused. Excuse me, kind of confused about the sudden change in genre, the sudden change in tone when it comes to it. To the Megan movie, Megan 2.0. From the original. And I think the reason being is because although the original was, like I say, 60% horror, 40% sci-fi, sci-fi comedy, whatever you want to call it, but mostly sci-fi, 60% horror, 40% sci-fi. Um, you know what, what sold Megan as a huge hit, the original Megan movie as a huge hit, was not only did it have a PG-13 rating, which you would think it shouldn't have had, but the obvious reason is because they wanted to sell the Megan dolls, the Megan replicas, if you will. They wanted to sell those, and they did. They sold tremendously, from what I understand. So, they wanted to sell them, and the only way they could sell them is by, having the movie be PG-13, a hard PG-13, razor edge PG-13, that compared to just being flat out R, and so so basically, because they kept it that way, not only was the movie seen by more people and everything, you know, but again, it sold mostly a lot of merchandise. And so the decision was, well, wait a minute, Megan, because it's pretty much revealed at the end of the first film that Megan is still around the house, and from what people have said about the movie, spoiling it a bit, if you will, those that they go online and spoil it through Wikipedia and all these other places, um, they have basically they and people like Angry Joe who do reviews, Megan still at the end of the first film she's in the Elsa device and everything, and thus she's in the home. She's still in the home. Her essence, her AI essence is still in the home. And everything, and we find out that the main reason she's around still is because her main program is still intact, and that is the fact that she is to protect Gemini's, and I think that's the character's name, her creator's name, Gemini's niece, Candy, or Caddy, or Candy, whatever her name is, Katie, Cady, Katie. Um, that's her main programming, that's her main objective. And, so that's kind of what this second movie is. It's about her basically, continuing her program to protect Katie and all that. But now it's also basically a story for her to, redeem herself, if you will. As I just checked something there, to redeem herself, and for what she did previously, for what she did previously, and that's kind of one of the things that upsets people that have seen the film and have, of course, spoiled it. The fact that she does not face any true consequences for her actions and all that for what she did. except for maybe the fact that when she does reveal that she's in the house, she knows about this Amelia robot and stuff like that. The only consequence she gets from Gemini, I think that's her name, again, her creator's name, Katie's aunt, if you will, the only punishment she gets after she reveals herself is, she gets placed in this, as she puts it in the trailer, Teletubby-like robot doll with a cartoon-like face, representing her. And I'll tell you this, be honest with you, the moment I saw her having that cartoon face on the little robot doll that she was put in, right there it kind of told me, yeah, this is not going to be, very much, a horror film like it was before. It's going to be more, comedic. It's going to be more action-packed. It's going to be more, I guess you could say, almost family-oriented in tone and in presentation. I mean, it's still going to have its dark elements and everything, but it's going to be more targeted towards that adolescent audience of teens and preteens and stuff like that. It's going to basically truly warrant having a PG-13 rating. Unlike the last film, which was only given that because they wanted to sell merchandise and everything. They wanted to sell merchandise. And again, it was also warranted that because, from a percentage standpoint, like I said, they were 60% horror, 40% sci-fi and comedy and everything. Well, basically 60% horror, 60% sci-fi and everything else. But anyway, that's the only reason I had that PG-13 rating, like I said earlier, because of that, and also they wanted to sell merchandise. But now, with this, it's basically like, yeah, we're going to be more family-oriented. We're going to be, we're going to be more semi-family oriented. We're going to be more bright and colorful in our presentation and stuff like that. And, just go from there. And that's what they did. That's what they did. Again, it still has its elements of darkness and a little bit of horror, semi-horror, if you will. But if you were to look at the percentage I gave for the first movie, you turn that number around, and this is more, I would say, on the grounds of, I would say, 90% sci-fi, comedy, semi-family oriented, and 10% horror. That's what it is. It's 90%, semi-family oriented sci-fi, comedy, sci-fi comedy, and 10% horror. That's how you can look at it. But they're also doing it for another reason. Again, when you look at the fact that she got placed in that Teletubby-like doll, as she had described it and everything in the trailer, again, that should tell you all you need to know of exactly what direction they're going to now take this. Because they see the merchandise dollars. They see, what they could sell, more so if M3GAN, is presented in a more semi-family oriented, light-hearted, sci-fi action comedy genre. And, people, believe it or not, from what I've read, actually enjoy the change. They're cool with it. And a lot of people, whether they liked the change or they didn't, they have made comparisons to the fact that, yeah, it's a good idea to go in this direction at times and all that. But, those that don't like the film, like John Campia, they feel like, an Angry Joe Vargas, they feel like, you should have, made the story make more sense. Like if you're going to do this, no problem, but make the story make sense. And the story to them didn't make sense, but to others it did. Because obviously you were heading in that direction, toward in the first film, even with the ending. So to go in the direction they've done, basically, and for, the creator, Gemini, to be like, look, I know you can be trusted. I know you do have emotion. You want to protect Katie. That's your job. But I'm not taking any chances with you, which is why she put her in that robotic doll body for a bit, the Teletubby one for a bit, to to the point that she had no, well, I wouldn't say again, but to the point that she had no other choice but to give her back her body and all that with some improvements. But basically I would say as a test, as a way to test her loyalty and everything. And we kind of see in the trailer, and I'm sure those who have seen the film see that, she has, she went on to prove her loyalty. She's like, look, I'm different now. I'm different. I've changed. And yeah, they are setting up for M3GAN 3, there's no doubt. But will they go back to the horror genre of M3GAN in the third film? I don't think so. I think the more we head forward with the M3GAN franchise, I think the more you're going to get it to be a family-oriented, sci-fi comedy action film, more so than horror. Like it's still going to keep its roots, with a bit of horror, a bit of shocking moments here and there. But at the end of the day, it's more along the lines of, they see where the money is, and that money is in merchandise. That money is in merchandise. With selling miniature Funko M3GAN, pops, and little M3GAN dolls, or life-size dolls, if you will, shirts and all that. They see the merchandise, and they're not going to want to let that go. And people say, well, Blumhouse is mostly horror. Yeah, it is mostly horror, but let's not forget they even attempted at one point with Universal and Hasbro to do a gem and a holograms film, and that wasn't horror. That was based basically on an iconic '80s franchise, and it didn't go over well. But it showed you that Blumhouse could be more than just horror, you know. And obviously, they're doing what A24 is doing. They're trying to go in a different direction, to where they're still going to keep the horror roots. They're still going to maintain that. It's like their main financial, bank, if you will, of success. But they're also going to try to go in other directions when it comes to movies and shows down the line. But yeah, basically in the end, M3GAN having a change, in M3GAN 2.0, it's nothing new. They did it with Terminator 2, and it's been a success, somewhat every now and then, but it's nothing new. So yeah, I would say don't worry about it, and I would say just give the movie a chance and see